I was leaning on the hood of a car with the plate number AB 5678 waiting when they finally stepped out. Her face turned ghostly pale, avoiding my gaze as I got off. He raised his hands as if in defense, but I dismissed them with a wave saying, "You're not worth my time," and drove away. This confrontation was the result of a long, twisted history. I met Jack when his family moved into the house next to ours when we were both 8 years old. As the only boys in the neighborhood, we naturally became as close as brothers. By fourth grade, we were playing soccer together and always had each other's backs, remaining inseparable throughout high school. I met Emily in 10th grade, and by our senior year, we were dating. Jack started seeing Hannah Williams, and we often went on double dates. On prom night, Emily and I shared an intimate moment while Jack and Hannah were in the next room doing the same. After high school, Jack enlisted in the Marines, while Emily and I pursued college degrees. I studied environmental science at Stanford University, and Emily chose graphic design at UCLA. Despite the relative closeness, maintaining our relationship was hard. Emily would occasionally cancel dates to see other people, which I only discovered through friends at UCLA. One evening, I followed Emily and a guy to a cafe in downtown Los Angeles. When she saw me, she pulled away from him, indicating a familiarity that suggested this wasn't their first time together. I couldn't hear their conversation, but Emily seemed uneasy, stealing glances at me while I acted indifferent. After finishing my coffee, I left without acknowledging her and drove home. The next day, our planned date came and went without me showing up or calling to cancel. Instead, I buried myself in a novel, cutting myself off from everything. On Saturday, I attended a party at the Beta Gamma House and met Vanessa, who left a lasting impression. Sunday found me engrossed in my studies when the doorbell rang. Looking through the window, I saw Emily standing outside. I opened the door and she pushed past me, entering the room. Turning to me, she asked, "Where were you Friday night? Why didn't you answer the phone?" Closing the door, I faced her and asked which question she wanted me to tackle first. "What?" she responded. There were 3 questions. Which one should I answer first? "Don't mess with me, Mark. What's going on?" she pressed. "All right, I'll answer them in my preferred order then. First, where I was mostly here, though I did go to a frat party Saturday night. Next, why I didn't pick up the phone. Simple, I didn't hear it because you didn't call. Yeah, my bad for unplugging it. Now, where were you Friday night? Right here, ordered sushi and got lost in a book. Why didn't you let me know you weren't coming?" she demanded. "I figured you were busy with your boyfriend." "Boyfriend? What are you talking about, Mark? You're my boyfriend." "Then who were you cozying up to at the cafe on Thursday?" "Just a friend." "We're not romantically involved. You were sitting close, leaning on him, and he had his arm around you. If that's not intimate, then what is it?" "It's meaningless, Mark. We're just friends." "If you don't see any problem, Emily, why didn't you come over and say hi or invite me to join you? Introduce me to your friend, have a chat with me before heading off on a date?" "Maybe you hesitated because then he'd question who I was and you didn't want to explain. Why didn't you approach me if it bothered you?" "Because I wanted to observe your behavior, see how you act." "Why would you want to do that?" "Because I've heard too much about your social life when I'm not around. Heard you've been out with guys on nights we had planned, so yeah, I wanted to see how you interacted with another guy. You don't control me, Mark. Nowhere does it say we're exclusive." "I thought we did, Emily. I remember giving you my bracelet and hoodie to show we were committed." "A hoodie and a bracelet? Seriously, Mark, that's so childish." "Maybe, but it happened in high school. And when we graduated, you didn't return them and say school's over, so we're done. But if you feel it doesn't bind you, I can see it the same way. I met a nice girl at the party and she gave me her number, so I guess I can call her now." Emily's expression turned cold and she spat, "Go ahead, I don't care," before storming off. Watching her leave, I realized she didn't make excuses, promised not to repeat her actions or reassure me of her loyalty. She had changed from a schoolgirl to a grown woman and demanded a change. It was tough given our history, but addressing her feelings now was wiser than ignoring them. Busy with homework from Monday to Wednesday, I finally reached out to Vanessa on Thursday. After chatting, we arranged a date for Friday night. I picked her up, we dined, and instead of a movie, She suggested attending a party she knew about. Arriving at a loft in Santa Monica around 8, fate played its hand. Emily and the guy she'd been with on Thursday were the first faces I saw. "Oh, damn," I muttered. "What's wrong?" Vanessa inquired. "Them. I know her, and I've heard the stories," I commented. "Yeah, that's the nickname she earned." "Why do you think she got that nickname?" he questioned. "Because she's notorious for her behavior. What do you call someone who's supposed to be in a committed relationship but still flirts with other men when her partner's away?" "Are you sure about these stories?" "I can't confirm firsthand, but several people say they've had flirty encounters with her. You didn't mention how you know her. I was supposed to marry her until I caught her last Thursday with the guy she's with now." "Oh boy. Can we expect any drama?" "No, we split on Sunday, so we're officially done. What are the chances I'd hear from you if Thursday hadn't happened?" "Very slim, but Thursday did happen, and we're here to enjoy ourselves. So shall we?" She took my hand and led me to meet the host. Laura, standing off to the side, looked shocked upon seeing me at the party, either because she didn't expect me here or because she was caught with someone new. Ignoring her, Robin introduced me to Gary and his wife, Stephanie, and we chatted briefly before getting drinks. The basement had transformed into a dance floor. Robin and I danced, mingled, and enjoyed ourselves. Whenever I glimpsed Laura, her expression was unreadable. Around 11, Robin suggested we leave because of her Saturday plans. After saying goodbye to our hosts, I drove Robin home. "Your ex seemed really focused on you today," she noted, "probably surprised to see me there." "No, she seemed uneasy seeing you with someone else. Tough luck. She's the reason our relationship ended." "Maybe, but she didn't look happy about it. That's her problem." "Does that mean I'll see more of you or that you'll start seeing other people?" "I prefer to date one person at a time. I enjoyed tonight, and I'll ask you out again if you're on board. You'll be the only one. What if I'm not ready for something exclusive? Then you'll decline, and I'll find someone else to date. If she says no too, I'll check back with you. If you still decline, I'll keep looking until I find someone who's always a yes. I like your straightforward approach, and I'm open to it. How about tomorrow night?" "Sounds good." I walked her to the door, said goodnight, and as I turned to leave, she stopped me. Facing her again, she confessed, "I usually don't kiss on the first date, but there is a first time for everything," and kissed me. "See you tomorrow," she called as she went inside. When I got home, Dad informed me that Laura had called, very upset. I explained it was too late to return her call and promised to do so in the morning. As usual, I slept in on Saturday. When I finally made it to the kitchen for coffee, Mom urged me to call Laura. "She's called twice already today." "Not until I've had my coffee." "Are things okay between you two?" "It's more complicated now. Does she know?" "She should. It was her choice." Just then, the phone rang. Mom answered, saying it was for me. "It's Laura." I picked up and greeted, "Yes, why didn't you call?" "I got in too late last night to call and just woke up." "That's not what I meant." "Why didn't you call me last night for our usual Friday date?" "We discussed this last Sunday, Laura. You said we weren't exclusive and agreed to see other people. I told you if you did, I would too, and you left in a hurry." "That's not what I meant, Rob. You should have known that." "Don't give me that, Laura. You were clearly with that guy I saw you with last Thursday." "I wasn't with him, Rob. I went to that party alone, and he happened to be there." "Sure, Laura. Believe what you want, but it doesn't change anything. I'm hearing things about you and how you got the nickname Miss Piggy. I don't know what you've heard, Rob, but it's not true. Why shouldn't I believe it after seeing you with your friend at the restaurant? And I don't buy that you coincidentally ran into him at the party. He was too close to you and hugging you when I arrived. No, Laura, you're not committed to just me, and I'm not interested in being one of many. Please return the ring and the letter, sweater. They mean nothing to you anymore, unlike in high school. I'll catch you later. Goodbye." "That sounds final," my mom observed. She decided that being exclusive wasn't enough for her. And as I said, I'm not interested in being one of many. Throughout all this, I found solace in Robin's company. Jim's letters arrived every few weeks, updating me on his life. He graduated from boot camp and entered specialized training, joining an elite unit where he mastered both construction and demolition. He never asked about Annabelle, so in my responses, I avoided mentioning her. I knew he wouldn't want to hear about her. Within a week of his deployment, Annabelle was already seeing someone she met at a party. A month later, she moved in with a coworker. 3 months after that, she moved again this time, living with a man she met when he towed her car. Rumors spread that he made her entertain his friends at his place. Then Annabelle disappeared without a trace until I got a letter from Jim. He had completed his training. Jim was assigned permanently to Norfolk after completing his training. He immediately called Annabelle to join him. "I wish you could be my best man," he wrote, "but we have little time to prepare. The sooner we get married, the sooner we can secure housing on base." Poor guy, I thought, knowing she might have another man lined up before his departure's echo faded. I was financially secure thanks to my grandparents who had set up a college fund for me since birth. It covered tuition and allowed me to rent an off-campus apartment. By junior year, Robin and I decided to move in together, giving me a taste of domestic life, which I cherished. After 6 months, I started considering making our arrangement permanent. However, doubts lingered that what Robin and I had was too perfect to last. She seemed committed until I mentioned looking for an engagement ring. That's when she dropped the bombshell she planned to return to California after graduation to marry her childhood sweetheart, now studying in England on a Rhodes Scholarship. They both understood each other's situations, including his relationship with an Englishwoman. We recognized that staying physically apart for several years wasn't realistic for two healthy young adults, so we agreed to an open relationship. "It shouldn't change things for us, Rob," she assured me. However, it did, especially for me. I felt like I was being pulled from a romantic relationship into a mere friendship. I wasn't content with casual flings, I craved a deeper connection. As a result, Robin and I gradually drifted apart. Nearly 4 months after Robin shattered my romantic hopes, she remarked, "You don't seem happy here, do you?" I admitted feeling uneasy and explained why. "I'm sorry, darling. Sometimes I wish I didn't love Alex so much so I could be what you need more. If it weren't for him, you'd be my partner. Thanks, I guess. So what's the plan? Shall we flip a coin to decide who stays and who goes?" "No need." I anticipated this moment. "Mom hasn't rented out my room yet. She's keeping it for me, at least until I'm 40 or until she has grandchildren. So you're staying and I'm leaving? Friends always?" After a hug, she requested, "One last night, please?" I had been back home for a week when, on Friday evening, while working on an article in my room, Mom called from downstairs, "Rob, someone's here to see you." Descending, I found Laura chatting with Mom. Mom nodded at me, saying, "I'll leave you two alone," and retreated to the kitchen. "Hi, Rob. Hi, Laura. How are you?" "Okay, I guess, hoping things will get better." "Oh," Robin called. "She mentioned you're back on the market and hinted I should hurry if I want to be first in line." Why fight for the first spot? Why fight at all? There wouldn't be a line if I hadn't acted foolishly. In fact, Robin wouldn't even be an issue. "I'm not fighting for a spot, Rob. I just want to return to where I belong." "Where's that?" She lifted her left hand, revealing, "I never returned your ring." My class ring was still on her left ring finger. "There's a party at Alice Johnson's tonight. Want to go with me?" She dangled the idea, adding, "Just so everyone's clear, I've staked my claim. I've got you back and I'm broadcasting it." The real surprise came after the party. She remained silent as I drove her home, gazing out the window. When we reached her house, I suggested, "How about apartment hunting on Saturday? Renting a place together is more economical than staying in motels. Are you asking if I want to move in with you?" It's crossed my mind. "What time? Around 9. "Great, you've got yourself a date." Laura and I settled into a 2-bedroom apartment halfway between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. We turned the second bedroom into an office, placing her computer desk next to mine. About a month later, Jim returned home on a 30-day leave, spending a lot of time with Laura and me. Seeing Jim and Annabelle together made me question my earlier suspicions about her. However, 3 weeks after Jim went back on duty, Annabelle reappeared. With Jim deployed to Iraq, Annabelle opted not to wait for his return. She disappeared for 2 weeks, staying with her new partner. When she visited Jim in Norfolk 3 weeks later, rumors resurfaced about her liaison with an old flame, including alleged parties and hosting group encounters. I thought about confronting her, but Laura dissuaded me, saying it was none of our business. Besides, as far as we know, Jim and Annabelle have an open relationship, a common arrangement during long military separations. Laura doubted Jim would agree to such terms, but informing him about Annabelle's behavior might backfire. Instead, she suggested I let it be. Jim returned from Afghanistan just in time to be my best man at my wedding to Laura. Afterward, he and Annabelle moved to Norfolk, where he completed his last 9 months of military service. Upon discharge, they came back home, and Jim got a job with a construction company as a heavy equipment operator. Over the next 2 years, Jim and Annabelle became regular guests at our home, visiting us at least once every 2 weeks. There were no immediate signs of trouble between Jim and Annabelle, and no indication of infidelity from her. Laura's theory about their relationship seemed believable, especially when Jim's company secured a contract for an extensive pipeline project in Alaska. Given the challenging conditions at the site, Jim decided it would be best to leave Annabelle at home for the 4-month duration of his assignment. However, just a week later, Annabelle was spotted entering a motel with Gary Mellows, the owner of Jim's company. Not long after, Gary's car became a regular sight parked in Jim's driveway nearly every night. The Alaska project faced numerous delays, extending Jim's absence by another 2 months. Coincidentally, Laura and Annabelle shared the same doctor, and Laura was at the clinic the day Annabelle received shocking news she was 7 weeks pregnant, despite Jim having been away for over 3 months. Laura learned about Annabelle's pregnancy from 2 nurses who had gone to school with us. Knowing Laura's connection to Annabelle, they asked how she thought Jim would handle the news. In the realm of gossip among friends, patient confidentiality sometimes took a back seat. Laura speculated that Jim might never learn the truth. Annabelle would likely opt for a termination, solving the problem before Jim returned. However, events took an unexpected turn. Someone Laura couldn't dissuade informed Jim about the situation. Upon his return, Jim rented a car and discreetly parked near his house until he saw Mellows arrive and enter with Annabelle. After waiting 15 minutes to give them time, Jim entered the house with a digital camera, capturing evidence of their affair. An ambulance was later called, and Mellows ended up hospitalized. When the police arrived, they initially planned to detain Jim until he presented photographic evidence. Jim had used a Canon Rebel camera set to continuous mode, capturing Mellows lunging at him in a series of images. Although Mellows might have simply been trying to grab the camera, the photos clearly showed Jim defending himself. The police accepted Jim's explanation and left. 20 minutes later, Annabelle emerged onto the porch with a single suitcase, locking the door behind her. The divorce proceeded smoothly, and Jim also sued Mellows for alienation of affection. Additionally, Jim filed a lawsuit against Mellows, alleging that Mellows had hired him just to send him away and move in with his wife. Mellows had the option to settle out of court to avoid public attention, but he chose to fight the case, which resulted in his actions with Jim's wife becoming public knowledge. After an extended absence, the jury ruled in Jim's favor, awarding him $3 million. After settling legal fees and taxes, he kept just over $750,000. He used this to pay off his house, install an in-ground pool, and buy a new Ford F-350. Once the divorce was finalized, Annabelle disappeared, rumored to have moved out of town. To resolve the lawsuit, Mellows had to sell off some assets and properties. He also suffered a loss of business as customers and potential clients viewed him as untrustworthy due to his actions towards his employee's spouse. With funds still remaining, Jim proposed starting our own company, taking over the business Mellows had lost. I would handle the design work while Jim managed construction. After discussing it with Laura, we decided to go ahead, leading to the creation of RJ Constructors. As partners, we thrived. Not only did we attract many former clients of Mellows, but we also outperformed him on several projects. Jim made sure everyone knew whenever we did better than Mellows. The next 5 years flew by. Jim dated various women but never found someone to commit to long-term. He spent a lot of time with Laura and me, often joining us once a week with his current girlfriend. Things were going incredibly well. Laura climbed the corporate ladder, becoming regional manager and a leading candidate for vice president. I thought life couldn't get any better, and unfortunately, I was right. One Tuesday, as I finished a lunch meeting with a potential client, Gary Mellows approached and asked if he could buy me a drink. Personally, I held no grudge against Gary. I reasoned that if someone like Annabelle, whom I considered less than reputable, offered comfort to a lonely person like Gary, it wasn't fair to blame him for accepting. I never believed the story about Gary orchestrating Jim's departure to pursue Annabelle, knowing what I did about Annabelle's character. I speculated that Laura might have visited Gary's office to collect Jim's paycheck and expressed her loneliness due to his absence. In any case, Gary's issues were tied to Jim, not me, so I accepted his offer for a drink. Once we settled in, he asked, "How's everything going?" "Could be better," I replied. "Perhaps you'd consider selling," he suggested. "Selling? Why would I do that?" I retorted. "To make Jim my business partner," he said. "Are you out of your mind?" I exclaimed. "Not really." "Take a look at this," he said, opening his briefcase and handing me a folder. I opened it and was shocked. The folder contained photos of Laura and Jim holding hands as they entered a motel room. Several more images showed them entering or exiting the motel room, along with a few depicting them embracing and kissing in various locations. I looked up at Gary, who explained, "I hired a private investigator to gather evidence against Jim for revenge. When I received these photos, I didn't know she was your wife. I just knew she belonged to someone, so I had the investigator find out who she was." "Why were you involved?" I asked. "You followed his orders." "No, I didn't," he countered. "Yes, I had a fling with his wife, but I never orchestrated his departure to pursue her. She came to my office, shut the door, and began undressing. She said, 'Since you sent Jim away, you'll have to take care of me until he returns.' Being single, I declined. To me, this whole situation is Jim's fault. Everyone knows Annabelle's reputation. Jim should have been more cautious." "No, Rob. He hit me hard with that lawsuit, and I plan to retaliate. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle. Any idea how long this has been going on? According to the private investigator, it's been at least a year, maybe longer. How could it go unnoticed for so long? If she never raised suspicions, how did you uncover it? So why do you want to buy me out? What's in it for you? Consider it an equal partnership. I'll have an equal say. If Jim proposes Plan A, I'll push for Plan B. I'll make sure we undercut every bid he makes and drive the company into the ground. Jim will suffer the consequences, but you will too, not entirely. If the business collapses, we'll liquidate assets and I'll get most of my investment back. I won't profit, but I won't lose much either. What if he gets violent to make you sell? Last time, he caught me with his wife and I focused on getting the camera instead of defending myself. If he tries again, it won't go well for him. I can handle myself. So, are you interested? Maybe, but I want to do my own investigation first. If I decide to proceed, do you have a price in mind?" I suggested a figure, and he found it reasonable. He advised me to contact him if I decided to move forward. I left the meeting with Mellows feeling completely shaken. How could Laura and Jim have carried on for nearly a year without me noticing? Laura had shown no signs of discontent, no decline in affection. Everything seemed normal from my perspective. What had gone wrong? While I trusted Gary's evidence, I couldn't ignore the possibility of tampered photos or his personal vendetta. I needed certainty before acting. Back at the office, I called a friend at an insurance agency for recommendations on private investigators. Armed with this, I arranged a meeting, and 13 days later I had my answers. On supposed work trips, Jim met Laura at the Comfort Inn on Melrose. How she managed to get time off for these rendezvous puzzled me. Now, I had to decide my next steps. Though my desired path was clear, I needed a solid plan. After 2 hours with a lawyer, I understood my options and obligations. With no fault grounds, assets would be divided evenly. Concerned about Laura's share from selling my stake in the company, I realized deception might be necessary. Even so, she would still get some proceeds. I struck a deal with Mellows to officially sell him my stake for a third of its real value. 1/3 of the payment went into a bank account solely in my name, while the remaining 2/3 were deposited into an offshore account I had set up. The agreement stated that Mellows wouldn't come to the office or take my place until I handed Laura and Jim the documents. Laura filed for divorce, citing infidelity, while Jim pursued a case for alienation of affection. Despite living in a no-fault state, I could still sue for infidelity, possibly leading to a more favorable asset division. To support the claim of infidelity, I needed solid evidence. Reviewing reports from both Gary's private investigator and my own confirmed their betrayal. My investigator found that Laura and Jim were secretly meeting at a motel every Wednesday. To get undeniable evidence, he booked a room for surveillance and convinced the motel staff to always assign Laura and Jim to the same room. On Wednesday morning, I told Maria, our receptionist, to inform Jim that I had a dentist appointment and might not return in the afternoon if I didn't feel well. After Laura left for work, I returned home. The locksmith arrived right on time at 900 to change all the locks. Once he was done, I went to the bank and emptied our joint accounts and the safe deposit box. Despite my lawyer advising me to take only half, I was determined, forget you, Laura. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She'd have to fight for her share. I also withdrew funds from the business. If it proved excessive, Jim could contest it in court. But until then, it was mine. At 12:10, my detective called to report that Laura and Jim had checked into room 128. I drove over, had a brief chat with the detective, then positioned myself on the hood of a nearby car, waiting for them to come out. After a tense confrontation, I drove off. Just as I was leaving, a man approached them and handed over some documents. Alongside the divorce papers, Laura received a temporary restraining order requiring her to stay 500 feet away from me and the house. Securing it required some manipulation. I had to fabricate a story that a third party had tipped me off about Jim and Laura discussing my insurance coverage and the value of business shares. A hearing was pending to decide if the restraining order would become permanent, but it might take a few weeks. It was just another tactic to unsettle Laura. The crucial point was that she couldn't enter the house without court supervision, and I had no intention of making myself available to make keys for the new locks. With Jim's papers for the foreclosure attachment suit was a brief note. You know how these suits go, don't you? How does it feel to be on the receiving end? Driving away from the motel, I called Gary on his cell phone. Everything's set. Enjoy your first day at the office tomorrow. I drove to the airport, parked in the long-term lot, stashed my cell phone in the glove compartment, and boarded a flight to Cabo San Lucas. After a week of scuba diving and relaxing on the beach, I returned home. When I turned on my phone, I found it flooded with voicemails. Most were from Laura, as expected, but there were also 4 from Jim. You'd think he'd be the last person eager to talk to me. Nevertheless, I had no interest in speaking with either of them. Would I want an explanation? Of course, I'd want to understand why, but I had decided to leave them in the past and focus on moving forward. Their reasons for betrayal were not something I wanted to dwell on. My attorney was aware of my week-long absence, so I informed him of my return. He suggested I contact Laura, who had been trying to reach me twice daily to access the house and retrieve her belongings under court supervision. I was about to instruct him to make arrangements with the court to allow her entry when a different idea struck me. A chance to further unsettle her. I called her and asked about her needs. I need my clothes and other items, but I can't enter the house even with court supervision because I lack a key and they won't let me break in, she explained. You have nothing there to take, I replied. I donated everything to Goodwill. I don't want any reminders of your deceitful behavior. There's nothing of yours left, not even a stray hair clip. You had no right to do that, she exclaimed. I had every right, just as you had the right to betray me. We need to talk, she pleaded. It's not what you think. Be honest, Laura. I know you weren't happy with Jim. I'm sure of it. Goodbye, Laura. I ended the call. Although Laura's belongings remained in the house, I was intentionally delaying her retrieval. It was my way of unsettling her, ensuring she wouldn't get her things back anytime soon. I've always had a good rapport with Maria, our multitasking receptionist, secretary, bookkeeper, cook, and cleaner, so I called her to check in. Not too bad for me, but things are rough at the company. There's constant fighting between Gary and Jim over trivial matters. Jim gives orders and Gary refuses to comply. Orders get placed and canceled quickly. Work sits idle while they argue. I was fed up, so I handed in my resignation last Friday. But Gary offered to double my salary if I stayed, so I decided to stick around. They even got into a physical fight last Thursday, but there was no clear winner. Although Jim ended up with a broken nose. Why did you leave us? Why side with Gary? I shared the entire saga with her. She was silent for a moment before responding. Now I have another reason to stay. And what's that? I can help Gary. I never cared for Jim. He always had a sleazy charm that made my skin crawl. Even while knowing I was engaged, he persistently flirted with me. Once he suggested that he'd let me go if I agreed to spend an evening with him. We both understood what he meant. When I asked how you would feel about him letting me go, he clammed up. You should have told me, I said. It was personal and I managed it. I feel bad for you and Laura, Rob, but there might be a silver lining for me, she replied. What do you mean? I asked, confused. It means you're single again. How do you feel about being pursued? She asked, smiling slyly. Weren't you engaged? I questioned. I was until 3 weeks ago when I caught that jerk cheating on me. So if you're interested, I'll consider you when I start dating again. But that won't happen for a while. I won't give Laura any ammunition, she explained. I appreciate that. I'll keep you in mind, I said, genuinely touched. My phone rang 16 times that day, 14 calls from Laura and 2 from Jim. I couldn't imagine what Jim could say that I'd want to hear. If he was calling to ask for something, it certainly wasn't from me. I deleted all the messages and went home, made myself dinner, and impulsively called Gary Mellows to check on his scheme. Things are going well. I made sure to be at your desk when Jim arrived. He saw me, frowned, and demanded to know why I was there. I chuckled and told him I was his new partner. His face was priceless. You could practically see the steam coming out of his ears. He read our agreement and immediately called for a fuel truck because the front-end loader and other equipment at Wilkins' site had run out of diesel. Once he left, I canceled the order. When one of the loaders ran out of fuel, Jim called Allied and gave them an earful. They informed him that I had canceled the order and suggested he find fuel elsewhere. He came to me, demanding to know what I was doing. I explained that Allied was overcharging us and I was seeking a better price. Things went downhill from there. A little birdie told me you two ended up in a fistfight, I said. Yes, it happened last Thursday. And the outcome? I might have overestimated my abilities, but I managed to land a few good punches, Gary admitted. Well, good luck with your plan, I said before hanging up. I then headed to the room I'd turned into an office, fired up my computer, and began drafting my resume. I planned to start my job hunt the next day. As I typed away, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found Jim standing there. What do you want? I demanded. We need to talk, Rob. No, we don't. It's not my fault, Rob. She came on to me. I was in a bad mood because of Annabelle. I wasn't thinking straight. I'm sorry, but it wasn't my fault. I didn't pursue her, he pleaded. But you knew she was my wife. You knew how you felt when you found out about Annabelle. And you didn't stop to think how I'd feel. You knew I'd find out sooner or later, probably the same way you found out about Annabelle. Someone told you. Well, someone told me. You're a scoundrel as far as I'm concerned. You're supposed to be my friend. Even if I believe Laura made a move on you, which I don't, you should have turned her down. Just like I turned Annabelle away when she made advances on me. You knew better, but you went ahead anyway. Even if she initiated it and caught you off guard, that doesn't excuse the second, third, fourth, and however many times after that. No, you stabbed me in the back, plain and simple. Why did you set me up with Mellows? He asked. Because if I'd come after you, things might have ended differently. But you're not worth going to jail over. Involving Mellows will bring you grief that will last far longer than any physical altercation. But you know what? The rage I felt is gone, I said. Then I punched him. I grabbed his shirt, pulled him into the house, slammed the door shut, and unleashed my anger. He was unconscious when I dragged him out and put him in his car. You wouldn't believe the grin on my face when I got back inside. The police might show up, but I wasn't concerned. I could say he attacked me and I acted in self-defense. I'd refer to his altercation with Mellows and claim he was upset because I sold my share of the business to Mellows. The next day, I sent out 14 resumes and checked in with my attorney. He mentioned a hearing on the temporary restraining order set for the following Monday, but hadn't heard from Laura or her lawyer. Contemplating contacting Laura, I decided against it. Delaying her hiring a lawyer meant delaying any communication. Throughout the week, I received responses to my resumes and traveled for interviews in Atlanta on Wednesday and Baltimore on Thursday. Though I enjoyed both interviews, I also heard back from a San Diego company, sparking my interest in warmer climates. I scheduled an interview for the following Tuesday. Monday arrived with the restraining order hearing. Surprisingly, the judge found no grounds to uphold it, ordering me to grant Laura access to the house. Laura attended with her lawyer and attempted to speak with me. I stepped aside, sought my lawyer's assistance, and returned to her side. "You wait until my attorney arrives before speaking to me," I insisted. "I just wanted to inform you I'll be coming tonight," she replied. "No, you won't. I have a job interview at 230 and won't return until Wednesday. You can visit after 6, I stated firmly. Her lawyer began to speak, but I interjected. "She will not step foot in this house without supervision. A court representative will oversee everything, and you're welcome to have your attorney present too," I stated firmly. "No, that's not satisfactory. They won't understand what she's taking. If she grabs something inappropriate, I'll have to fight to retrieve it. She managed 2 weeks away and can handle another 48 hours, I insisted. Her lawyer sighed. "Then let's await the judge's decision," he said, turning to leave. Laura intervened. "Forget it, I can wait." I nodded and said, "Wednesday at 600 before departing." "Wait a moment, Rob, can we have a conversation?" she pleaded. "No," I replied, exiting the building. Satisfied with my interview in San Diego, I returned home, eagerly awaiting news from them. At 6 p.m., Laura arrived with a representative from her lawyer's office. The court-appointed woman came at 620, and during those 20 minutes, we chatted over coffee. She explained her role as an observer for the court, tasked with noting seized items and any disputes. No need for a list of disputed items. "She can take whatever she wants," I assured her. "If that's your stance, why the firm position against her?" she asked. "She betrayed me with someone who was my best friend for over 25 years. I couldn't retaliate physically without legal consequences, but I had to do something to inflict some pain. It wasn't much, but it was something," I explained. As the doorbell rang, I ushered Laura and her lawyer's representative inside, then went outside to mow the lawn. When I returned, everyone had left except Laura, who sat at the kitchen table sipping tea. She glanced up as I entered. "You deceived me. You didn't donate any of my belongings to Goodwill," she accused. "Maybe not, but I enjoyed seeing your reaction when you thought I had. I hadn't anticipated everything ending up yours. It'll take longer to sort out than I thought," I admitted. I retrieved my key ring from my pocket, took out my house key, and slid it across the table to her. "No need to move. You can collect the keys on Friday." "Friday? I'll have vacated by then," I responded. "Why are you leaving if you intended to give me the house?" she asked. "I have a job interview at 230, and I'm relocating once I secure a job." "Why the restraining order and the lies about disposing of my belongings?" she questioned. "That's a naive question. After what you put me through, I had to retaliate somehow. Just be grateful I chose a peaceful resolution rather than a violent one. Not attacking you doesn't absolve you, but it's the best recourse I had without facing legal repercussions. I know you declined when I asked if we could talk tonight, but I'm still going to try to persuade you that divorce isn't necessary," she said. "Let's be realistic, Laura. After what you've done, there's no way we can salvage our marriage. But that doesn't change my feelings for you, Rob. I love you, and you know it. What happened with Jim was a mistake, just a foolish mistake. I've always liked Jim, but my feelings for him don't compare to the love I have for you. Your feelings for Jim don't matter. You had a good time with him. Whether you loved him or not, it's still infidelity. Just remember how devastated I was when I found out about Annabelle and Jim. I was so upset that I considered telling him, but you convinced me otherwise. That should have made it clear how I would feel if you did the same to me. Doesn't my love for you matter? No, Laura, it doesn't. It wasn't enough to stop you from betraying me. But Rob, it didn't mean anything. Truly, it was insignificant. It was an unforeseen circumstance, an accident. How could having relations with my former best friend be classified as an accident? I retorted. He visited our home while you were in Santa Fe. He was distraught about Annabelle. Even after cutting her out of his life, he still longed for her. We had a drink, and as he began to cry, I embraced him, trying to console him. I recall thinking, this is so wrong, I shouldn't be doing this. Yet it felt oddly comforting. The next time you were out of town, Jim came by, and we both understood his intentions, and we resumed our liaison. There was no love involved, Rob. It was purely physical, just a fleeting thrill in my life. Throughout it all, I never neglected you. I love you sincerely, Rob, and you know it. We can overcome this. Divorce isn't necessary. Love has no bearing on this, Laura. I need a divorce. I can't coexist with someone who has betrayed me. It's straightforward, Laura. You broke my trust. If I stayed, I'd be vigilantly monitoring you. You anticipate another transgression, don't you? By your own admission, you continued because you enjoyed the deceit. Your promises mean nothing. You vowed to forsake all others when we married, and you broke that vow. I can't trust anything you say, Laura. Jim's story is entirely different from yours. He claims it wasn't an accident and that you were playing games with him. Either he's lying or you are. The bottom line is that I can't trust either of you, I said, frustration evident in my voice. We're not giving up, Rob. I'm going to fight for our marriage. We love each other, and I know we can get through this. My lawyer says we can get the court to order counseling, and I believe that will help us, she insisted. You don't seem to get it, Laura. I don't want you right now. Yes, I still love you, and it will take time to get over that, but there's no way I can live with you again. Every time I'm with you, I'll remember you being with Jim, my best friend. I can't live like that, I responded, trying to keep my composure. You won't fight for a divorce because if you do, I will release the video of your last meeting with Jim. Every family member, friend, and colleague will get a copy. I'll make sure it's on every amateur adult site with your full name and address, she threatened, her voice shaking. Crap, Rob, there's no such video, she retorted. Oh, no? Wait here, I said, going to the den to retrieve my briefcase. I pulled out a disc and returned to the kitchen, handing it to her. Watch it, and then decide if you want anyone else to see it. Laura's face paled as she took the disc. Now, if you don't mind, I have things to do. You can pick up your things on Friday. For now, you have to leave, I stated firmly. On Thursday and Friday, I moved out, placing most of my belongings in storage. I rented a room at the executive suites for a month, hoping to find a job soon. Over the next 2 weeks, I traveled to Salt Lake City, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Chicago, and Detroit for interviews. Although I felt positive about each one, I didn't hear back immediately. I calculated my finances and realized I could live comfortably for about 6 years without a job. I started looking into cities and states with a lower cost of living, hoping to stretch those 6 years into 8, maybe 10. Laura signed the divorce papers and returned them to my attorney. I almost regretted her compliance. I would have loved to scatter CDs of her and Jim all over the house, but a deal is a deal. We agreed on a $5,050 division of property, with each paying their own legal fees. Since I filed the suit, I covered the legal costs. Laura wanted the house, and my half of the equity was slightly more than what I owed the bank, so it worked out. True, I had to give Laura half of what I got from selling my share of the company, but I had planned for that. She claimed I sold out too cheaply, but it didn't matter because the rest of the money was safely tucked away. I heard some interesting gossip as soon as I was out of the picture. Jim started intimidating Laura so relentlessly that she had to get a restraining order against him. Not that I cared, but it amused me. I decided to wait until the divorce was finalized before taking any action. Eventually, I began receiving calls from some of the companies where I had interviewed. A company in San Diego called, asking me to return for another interview. Before I could arrange it, Gary contacted me. How would you like your company back, he asked. Why would I want my company back? I sold it to you to get away from Jim. Why would I want to be his partner again? You wouldn't, but you don't have to. After our last argument, I told him if he was so unhappy with me as a partner, I'd either buy him out or sell his half to someone else. He thought for about 30 seconds and then asked how much I'd pay for his half. He accepted half of what I gave you. The question remains, why should I want the company back? If you've done even half of what you said to sabotage Jim, the company might not be worth much now. You could be surprised. Come to the office and let's talk, Gary urged. I figured I had nothing to lose, so I went to see him. When I walked in, Maria jumped up from her desk and hugged me, then poked her head into Gary's office to tell him I had arrived. As you know, I bought you out to mess with Marshall. I didn't really need him, but things are changing. I'm getting more into the construction side of the business and want to move away from the engineering part. On one hand, I couldn't get the engineers, Gary began. I started looking for alternatives and thought about calling you to set up a separate company for the engineering work. But then Marshall sold me the company and I thought, why not just sell it to you and make a long-term contract for the engineering services? Gary explained. I can't afford to buy both my half and Jim's half, I replied. You won't need to pay much because the company isn't worth much now. I've transferred all the construction work and equipment to my other company, leaving just the engineering side. I'll sell you the company for what I paid Jim and sign a 5-year contract for engineering services. Plus, there are still contracts with about 15 other firms. You can't lose, he assured me. How much did you pay Jim? I asked. He told me, and it was less than what I had in my offshore account. But there's one condition, he added. And what's that? I inquired. I've been transparent with Maria about this. She said if you agree, she will stay with you and not move to my other company. If you accept the deal, you'll keep her on your team, he explained. I didn't need long to decide. I agree to the deal, but I won't finalize anything until my divorce is complete, which will take at least 3 weeks, I stated. Gary agreed to the terms. As I was leaving, Maria said, I heard. Remember, you promised I would be first on the list. I didn't think you were serious, I replied. You can bet I am, she said with a radiant smile. As I drove away, my cell phone rang. It was my lawyer. Jim, having learned his lesson from Gary's lawsuit, had contacted my lawyer with an offer to settle. I instructed my lawyer to accept it. I arrived back at the executive suites with a big smile. In 3 weeks, I could start fresh with a new job, a new partner, and money in the bank. I planned to spend those weeks searching for a place to live and shopping for furniture. Who says nice guys always finish last?